known as the Ten Commandments, but we're going to discuss, among other things, the difference between 10 statements and 10 commandments. So that's going to be starting this coming Tuesday, God willing, at 7 p.m. Starting May 17th, there'll be 4 classes on Israel, a series on Israel, a little bit of its history, its holiness, and the status of Israel today. So that's going to be May 17th, at Sundays. We're going to have classes every Sunday anyhow, whether it's part of the series or not. So you should know that every Sunday at 11 o'clock, except every now and then I have to cancel. But ready to start? Good morning. That was an announcement from the sponsor. So. Last week, we started the discussion about preparation, how we prepare for Moshiach. And I'm going to repeat some of the things that we discussed last week and take it from there. We've been preparing for Moshiach for thousands of years, from the beginning of creation, especially from the time the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, and especially in the last 2,000 years are known as the days of Mashiach, and especially in recent times. Everything has been pointing to the fact that the world is coming to a state of either destruction or perfection. So when we look at the negative things that are happening in the world, it points us to Mashiach, to the final redemption, and when we look at the positive things, it also points us in that direction. For many, many years and decades, the Rebbe would refer to our journey towards Mashiach as that we're on the road towards Mashiach, and we've reached our destination, almost about fully reaching our destination. But there was something that the Rebbe said that changed the emphasis a little bit. I think it's a significant change. When you give the analogy of the journey, the analogy is given by one of the great Bible commentators known as the Malbim. The Talmud says that you're not supposed to try to figure out, based on biblical verses, when Mashiach is coming. You're not supposed to calculate the time. But then things changed, and the medieval rabbis started to calculate the times for Mashiach, the most opportune times. So the Malbim gives an analogy, gives a parable. He says, when you're going on a trip, what are the first thing that after 15 minutes of driving, what do the kids say to you?
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet? That's human nature. Even little children will do that. And then a half hour later, again, are we there yet? And the father gets a little bit exasperated. Don't ask now, we have so many hours to go. Just look at the view and look at the cows and the horses that you see on the way. But finally, when you arrive at your destination and you're just looking for the final resting place, you hear the child hears the father asking about, are we here already? And the kid says, 1 second, Dad. When I asked, are we here, you got upset at me, and now you're asking the question. He says, yeah, that when we're on the road, we focus on the road. When we're at our destination and we have to get to the final place, that's when we start asking, are we there already? And that's how the Malbim explains why the emphasis on trying to figure out when Mashiach is coming that was discouraged in the past is no longer discouraged. Because when you're on the journey, you have a long way to go. You don't focus on the destination. You know the destination. It has to be in the back of your mind, and you have to realize that that's the goal. But you have to focus on the road. You can't just be distracted by the goal. But when you are about to reach the goal, then it's the reverse. You have to focus on the goal, because that's the whole purpose of this trip. So, in recent times, the clamor for Mashiach, the emphasis on it has become much more pronounced because we are at the very end of this journey. But in spite of that analogy, the Rebbe used another analogy when he was once speaking to the chief rabbis of Israel. And he said Mashiach, or I don't know if he used the word Mashiach or redemption, but these words are used interchangeably, is on the threshold. In other words, you're in the house, Mashiach is on the threshold. All you have to do is open the door and just bring him in. This is a lot, I think, much more advanced than just you're on the road and you reached the destination. It's no longer a question about reaching your destination. The question is about bringing it in, internalizing it. It's not enough to go on a journey towards the goal. You have to bring the goal into your home, into your lives. The Rebbe also mentioned once, it says in the biblical prophecies and the prophecies of our sages, that in the Messianic age we will be partaking of a feast. The feast will include the Leviathan, the huge fish, and the Shor HaBar, the wild ox, which is a subject unto itself, whether it means a physical feast or a spiritual feast, but that's for another time. So the Rebbe says the feast is right in front of us. It's on the table. Just open your eyes to look at it. In other words, what's lacking today is not that the dynamic of Mashiach is not in front of us. It's that we haven't opened our eyes. We have to learn how to open our eyes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. Why do we have our eyes closed? If that's all that it takes to open our eyes, so I mentioned this last week, because the last moments of exile are dark moments, even as we have rays of light coming from the future into our lives, but there's still a situation that we are in exile. Exile is like fumes, and a fire, God forbid, what harms the people more than the fire itself are the fumes that desensitize you. We have become desensitized by exile. We've been in exile so long that we don't feel the urgency of getting out of exile as much as we should. This is part of perhaps God's tranquilizer to make us capable of enduring all the pain and suffering. Imagine this, we went through, when I say we, it means recent times, we went through a Holocaust. No normal human being could endure such pain and such suffering. So God gave us a tranquilizer. So the problem with a tranquilizer that you're not feeling the pain as much, but you also don't feel the positive things. It desensitizes you. You can't. It's a double-edged sword. So we're living partially with the rays of the future coming into our lives. At the same time, we're also living in an age of confusion, an age of desensitization. And we have developed what the psychologists call the Stockholm syndrome, where you identify with your captor. The exile is our captor. And we start to identify it and give it credence and give it legitimacy. So what we have to do is transform our exile mentality. In a way, we have to deprogram ourselves. We've been programmed, we've been brainwashed by exile, and because of that, we're not sensitive enough to wanting to get out of it. So we have to learn to deprogram ourselves, because that's the only way we're going to be prepared for Mashiach. Now, Mashiach could come whether we're prepared or not. There's a guarantee that we know. And if someone says, well, it's hard to believe in a Messianic age, it's hard to believe, it's hard not to believe. You have to have faith to not to believe in the coming of Mashiach, because if you do believe in a God, and you recognize that God, as the Torah tells us, is great, all-powerful, and all consumed with kindness and compassion, how could a God like that not bring us Mashiach? It's just untenable. It's irrational. Exile is irrational. So if you want to be a rational human being, you have to believe, you know that there is going to be a Messianic age. Whether we deserve it, whether we work for it or not, it's going to happen. But it could happen by hook or by crook, as they say. It could happen with us being part of the process, preparing for it, or it could be in spite of us. There's a cute little story told, it's a long story, but I'll make it short, of a family of two brothers who were very close to each other, and something happened. They had a falling out, and they became bitter enemies to the point where years went by where they lived in the same city, they wouldn't communicate with each other, they wouldn't say hello to each other. Finally, one of them was marrying off a child, and he really felt this is an opportunity to reconcile and bring my brother back into the fold. But he knew that his brother is not going to want to come. And in fact, the brother was so adamant about not coming to the wedding, he made sure to put on his pajamas early in the evening, that nothing should convince him to leave to go to the wedding, because he knew that his brother's going to try to make an effort. So what does the brother do? The brother knew that his brother, who was in the pajamas, loved music, especially the violin, and he would go crazy for the beautiful music. So the brother, who's marrying off a child, sends the musician, the violinist, who was a concert violinist, to his house, and he started playing music. And the guy says, "Where's that music coming from? That's such beautiful music." And he goes out of his house in his pajamas, and the violinist is walking towards the wedding hall. And by the time he realizes where he is, he realizes he's at the wedding. And his brother said, "You could have come with a suit. If you don't come with a suit, you'll come with your pajamas. We can greet Moshiach with a three-piece suit. We can come with our pajamas. That's the only alternative we have. It's going to happen one way or another. Our efforts could either accelerate his coming, because if, let's say, the deadline is tomorrow, it could happen today, or it will make what happens much more glorious, or it will involve us. And I think that's the most important part, that we want to be the catalyst. We want to be the engine that brought about the Messianic age. So we have to deprogram ourselves. I'd like to share a parable that describes what happened with the Jewish people in the modern times. The parable is of a king. In rabbinic literature and midrashic literature, most parables involve kings. Some people think we still have a king, so that's a good parable. This king is having a contest, and anyone who wins, who qualified to be part of this contest and who accepts the challenges, the reward would be that the king is building a new palace in a distant part of the country, a glorious palace, and the king is going to invite the contestant to join him and live and dwell in that palace. Well, many different potential contestants came to, when they realized the challenges involved, they said, "No, it's not for us." But one very brave individual said, "No, I will accept the challenge." And the king gave him a golden key. And he said, "This is the key to the palace. The challenge is you have to travel there, and you will find many obstacles on the path, on the way. If you succeed and you get there, this key, this golden key, will open up the palace gates." And then he gives him a scroll that gives him directions where to go and how to get there. Well, even though none of the other people who applied for this contest were interested in it, because they realized the challenges were too great, they were now very jealous. So they did everything in their power to try to get him off the course, take a different route. You're taking the wrong route, take this route. Some were saying the golden key is worthless, it's not really gold. We'll give you the golden key. Take our key from us and let's have yours. And they taunted him, they threatened him, and he persevered, and he kept on going until finally he can see over the horizon the palace, the image of the palace, and he's happy, "I'm getting there, I'm soon going to be there." Before he realizes anything, he's beaten mercilessly, beaten to a pulp, into unconsciousness. And he wakes up after a few days in the state of unconsciousness, and he's without any strength, but he musters as much strength as he could, and he crawls to a cottage that he can see not too far away. But the cottage doors were locked. But he has a key with him. He has the golden key. What are the odds that this golden key will work to open the doors of the cottage? And lo and behold, the key opens up the doors of the cottage, and he comes in there, and there's food, there's water, there's medication, there's a comfortable bed, and he nurses himself back to health. And he decides, this is a beautiful place. This is wonderful. Life is perfect here. When the king sees that the contestant, the winner of the contest, is not there, not coming. He was so close and he's not coming. So the king sends a messenger to get him out of the cottage and say, yes, this was a gift that you had to regain your strength, to nurse your wounds, but that's not where you belong. You belong in the palace. This is the parable. When God gave us the Torah, he first went to the other nations of the world and he asked them if they want the Torah, and they said, no, it's too challenging. He gave them samples and they said, no, this is too difficult for us. We don't want it. Okay, you don't want it? You have nothing against you. You don't have to have it. The Jewish people were the only ones who undertook this challenge, and they said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we're going to accept it even before we know what's in it. We sacrificed our own lives to accept the Torah. And as soon as we accepted it, all of a sudden, all the nations of the world are jealous of us. They hate us because of it. It says in the Talmud, why is Mount Sinai called Sinai? The word Sinai is related to the word sinah, hatred. And one interpretation is that once we got the Torah at Sinai, that created hatred. The hatred towards Jews. Why? Why do they hate us? Because we have the Torah. But you were offered the Torah and you didn't want it. And if you want it now, you could convert if you really are sincere about it. No, we don't want it, but we don't want you to have it either. And they attacked us. They tried to get us to go on the wrong path, to start worshiping idols. They tried to tell us that their religion is the fulfillment of our religion and we should exchange the golden key that we have for another key. And when all that didn't work, and we got so close to the end, we were mercilessly beaten in the Holocaust. The Holocaust and the communist regime in the Soviet Union did everything in their power to destroy us. So what happened? God provided us with a respite, with a place to nurse our wounds. He gave us the United States, the best country in the history of the world for Jews. The Rebbe would often refer to the United States as the Malchus Shel Chesed, a kingdom, a government of kindness. In spite of what people will try to criticize America, it's the best country in the world for Jews, and he gave us the ability to return to Israel. And many Jews thought that this is it. This is the final redemption for us. We're living in a free country. We have every right to be Jews. We have every right to be prosperous. We have an army even. We have the ability to defend ourselves. And the key worked. But this was only a sample of the future. God says, before you get into the palace, I'm going to let you nurse your wounds and regain some of your strength. And then ultimately the goal is not here. When I say not here, I don't just mean geographically speaking not here, not in the situation that we're in right now. We want to go to the next level, to be in the palace together with God when the coming of Moshiach. So all of our freedoms that we have today are wonderful, and we're so appreciative to God for it, but it's not a substitute for the Messianic age. And it's not the Messianic age, the fact that we have all these freedoms. The Messianic age is one that is ushered in by Mashiach himself. We use the word, we're in Messianic times, but we use it advisedly. We don't mean that the redemption has already started. We mean to say that we're living in a period where the redemption is in front of us, and we just have to open our eyes to see it and just schlep it in, drag it into our lives. Now, when we talk about preparing for Mashiach, I should have said this at the beginning because this is the foundation of everything. In Judaism, there's no such thing as spontaneous. Spontaneous is usually something that will last for a few seconds and then it fizzles out. Everything needs preparation. Why is a bar mitzvah at 13? Because you need 13 years to prepare for it. Many people will say it's not enough. But you have to prepare for something of a great achievement. In the Jewish calendar, Rosh Hashanah, we don't just jump into Rosh Hashanah. We have a whole month of Elul, a month of preparation. And right now we're in a period called Sefira, the counting of the Omer. And this is very much relevant to the whole subject of preparing for Mashiach. Counting of the Omer is about the fact that from the second day of Passover onward, we're supposed to count the days until we reach the holiday of Shavuot. Well, the Midrash tells us that the reason why we're commanded to count the days is because when the Jewish people left Egypt, they were told they're going to get the Torah. And they were told that the Torah will be given to them after 50 days. They were so anxious, they were so eager, they were so yearning for the Torah that they started counting the days as an expression of, we can't wait to this event, this glorious event when God will give us the Torah, which represents the marriage of God with the Jewish people. That's why it's such a powerful, loving event, and we were just counting the days, yearning for that period. Well, whatever happened at Mount Sinai is the precursor to what's going to happen in the Messianic age. That experience that only happened once in history, that God reveals himself to an entire nation and gives them this marriage document called the Torah, that love affair was the most powerful historical event. If someone asks you, what was the most significant historical event in all of human history, in all of world's history, it's the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. But that was a temporary thing. The effects of it were only felt that moment. And then God says, now you have to recreate that moment through your efforts. How do you recreate it? By doing mitzvahs, of course, by studying Torah. And when you prepare enough of it, you will get the Torah anew. In other words, you will get the same Sinai experience, except it'll be a permanent experience. Also, another difference between another similarity and a difference between the Sinai experience and the Messianic age is the Sinai experience was so powerful that people couldn't endure. After the second commandment, people said to Moses, Moses, you get the rest. We can't handle it. It's so overwhelming. Well, the Messianic age will give us the same overwhelming experience, but we'll be able to receive it. We'll be able to absorb it. It won't overwhelm us. It won't destroy our faculties. So the counting of the Omer, preparing for Shavuos, is the same thing as preparing for the coming of Mashiach. And just like the people we yearned for the receiving of the Torah, that's how we have to yearn for Mashiach. But what exactly do we mean when we say we have to live with Mashiach? We have to yearn for it and we have to live for it. So I'm going to use the example of counting of the Omer. When we count the Omer, how do we count? The first day we say Hayom, Yom Echad. Today is one day. The second day we say Hayom, Shnei Yomim. Today is 2 days. Now, if the purpose and the reason, the original reason for counting the Omer is because the people were so eager to get the Torah, what happens if you're told that your wedding will take place in 50 days? How do you count if you're really anticipating it and eager to come to that? You count down. You say, today there are 49 days left. Second day you say 48 days left. Because you're so eager to come to that point that you're counting down the days. And yet we count up. We count today is 1 day, today is 2 days. We don't even say today is the first day or today is the second day. We tell you 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. What's the meaning of that? So the answer to that question will be answered by reference to another enigmatic statement in the Torah. Some of you may remember the story of Jacob, who's fleeing his brother's wrath, and he ends up in the home, his parents' homeland, and he comes to be with Lavan, turned out to be his father-in-law, his uncle. And he sees Rachel, and what does he do? He wants to marry her. So his father-in-law tells him, you work for me for 7 years, and then you'll marry her. At the end, he tricked him. But the Torah says something very strange. If you're in love with someone, deeply in love, passionately in love with someone, and you're told you're going to only be able to marry that person in 7 years, how will those 7 years appear to you? Every day will be like 7 years. And what does the Torah say? All these 7 years were like a few days because he loved her so much. It's so counterintuitive. It's the opposite of the human psychology. Human psychology is if you want something so badly, the longer it takes, even a short period of delay, you're miserable. And yet here it says that to him, 7 years were like a few days. So the answer is, when you're dealing with spiritual feelings, when you prepare for it, you're already accessing those feelings and that energy. When Jacob was in love with Rachel, it was not just a physical thing, it was not just an emotional thing, it was a spiritual attachment to her. He wanted to fuse his soul with her soul. And of course, that's what marriage ultimately is, fusing of two half souls. And it manifests itself in the physical as well. But it's primarily an ideal marriage is where the two half souls are spiritually fused. So Jacob, every day he was preparing to marry Rachel, was experiencing some of that spiritual energy. He was already married to her before he married her, at least to some extent. The first day. The second day it intensified. He didn't lose the energy of the first day, he added to it the energy of the second day. So every day was a love affair. He was experiencing that love and that spiritual energy every single day. So that's why 7 years were like a few days to him, because he was having such delight in the spiritual energy that he was experiencing. The same thing is true when the Jews were told they're getting the Torah. The giving of the Torah is not just a legal experience where God gives them laws. It was a relationship. It was a spiritual relationship, the most powerful spiritual relationship. So what do? How do you prepare for it? You prepare for it by experiencing that relationship the very first day, at least one aspect of it. So the first day is Yom Echad, is 1 day. I have 1 day's worth of connection to God that will be completed in 50 days. So every day, the Jewish people were experiencing Sinai in an increasing manner. And that's why the yearning for it was not just yearning for something that is elusive, they were incorporating it into their lives 1 day at a time, 1 step at a time, 1 level at a time. That answers a question in the Haggadah. We say, when we say the Dayenus, if God would have brought us to Mount Sinai and not given us the Torah, Dayenu, that would have been good enough. So the commentaries ask, what good is there to stand in front of a mountain? The whole purpose of the mountain was to get the Torah. So what benefit is there without getting the Torah, just being at the mountain? And the answer is because when they got to Mount Sinai, they had already experienced 40 plus levels of Torah, of the spiritual energy of Torah. And if they had just that, and they wouldn't have had the additional few days, it would have been a great thing in its own right. And this explains what it means to incorporate Mashiach in our own lives. What it means is, yes, we're waiting for something to happen, and we're yearning for it, and we're impatient even. Why hasn't it already happened? So we can get rid of all the suffering and pain and the hatred and the wars and all the negatives. But at the same time, we're supposed to live with Mashiach and incorporate Mashiach in our own lives. And what does that mean in simple, down-to-earth terms? In simple terms, it means, imagine Mashiach is here, and the world has changed, and there's no longer hatred in the world. There's love. there's perfection, there's everything positive that we can imagine. How would we behave? How would we behave towards another person? If the other person said something to us that might sound insulting, are we going to get angry and try to harm that person? In a Messianic environment, no, never. It'll be absolutely impossible for you to express yourselves in a negative way. Live that way now. Why wait for it to happen when it's going to be imposed on us, whether we like it or not? We can do it today. We can live our lives in a Messianic way, in a perfect way, even today. Now, it doesn't mean that we'll succeed all the way, but we should incorporate elements of it even today. So just by learning about what Mashiach is going to do and incorporating Mashiach in our lives, Mashiach environment in our lives, that's how we prepare for it. You don't prepare for it by sitting idle and saying, I'm waiting for it to happen impatiently, and it's not an enjoyable experience, it's painful because it seems elusive when you start living that way even now. In a very general way, Sphira, the word Sphira means counting, and there are 49 days of counting. 49 days. And 49 is divided by 7. You have 7 times 7, 49. Why 7? Why 49? Because there are 7 emotional attributes. And each one of the 7 contains elements of the other 7. So you have a total of 49. So each day of this counting, we focus on one of those attributes, and we try to incorporate that attribute, the way Torah defines it, into our lives. And there are many, many ways of explaining the 49. Actually, there are books written that go through all 49. But since we're comparing the counting to the preparation for Mashiach, it tells us that we have to also incorporate these 7 attributes. What are the 7 attributes? You have chesed, kindness. CNN interviewed the Rebbe, and they asked the Rebbe, what has to be done? The Rebbe said, Mashiach is on his way. What has to be done? The Rebbe said, a little bit more goodness and kindness. In other words, we have to focus on chesed and kindness. That's the order of the day. Gevura is judgment, discipline, strength. The Rebbe emphasized how it's important that we demand in our prayers. And there's this famous song that's sung by children, which the Rebbe initiated to be sung by everyone. We want Mashiach now. We're asking for it. We're demanding it. I mentioned this last week. The Chafetz Chaim says that just like a worker has to demand his wages, he has a right to demand them if he did the work, we have to demand Mashiach. And God is not insulted that we makes this demand, because it tells God that we care. Tiferes is beauty or harmony, which the Talmud says applies to the study of Torah. Torah is the ultimate work of harmony and balance. It fuses all the different attributes together. And it's the power of Torah, and the Rebbe emphasized how much it's the power of Torah that will prepare us for Mashiach, especially the parts of Torah that deal with redemption. This week is the week of Netzach. Netzach translates as victory or persistence, tenacity. The Jewish people are a stiff-necked people. It was said to us, about us by God, that we are a stiff-necked people, which is usually understood as a negative, that we have a lot of chutzpah, and we're incorrigible. But the truth is, as the Rebbe mentioned so many times, chutzpah is a positive thing when it's used the right way. When we come to God and we say, God, we have chutzpah, we're going to keep on persisting, we're going to ask for Mashiach, we're not going to give up, then that's music to God's ears, so to speak, as it were. God has no ears, but it's an expression. You have to be careful, because there are people who do believe that God has ears. So this is the week of Netzach. This week we're middle of Netzach, and it's Tiferes shebenetzach. It's beauty within Netzach. There's two kinds of chutzpah. I guess you could define some chutzpah where it's done with arrogance, and then this chutzpah that's done with beauty, with love. When a child sees his father, or a father sees his child in a sad state, and you say to your father, "Get up there! You can do it. You can handle it." You're using a lot of chutzpah, but you're doing it because of the love, the compassion you have for your loved one. Then we have Hod. Hod is one of the interpretations of it is humility, ability to submit. When the Midrash, when it talks about the coming of Moshiach, it says Moshiach is going to make an announcement. What is he going to speak to the Jewish people and say? Anavim, humble ones, the time of your redemption has arrived. In other words, humility is very important in preparing for Mashiach. Yesod is bonding. This is the importance of Jewish unity. Jewish unity is more than just love for your fellow. Love, you could love someone, but it's still someone who's an outsider. Jewish unity means that we're all one. And when you feel that bonding, that itself is a tremendous power to bring Mashiach. And Malchus, which translates as kingship or sovereignty, the Rebbe said that, how do we bring Mashiach? One way is by accepting Mashiach's authority over us. And how do we do that? One way of doing that is by revealing the spark of Mashiach within each and every one of us. Every one of us has a spark of Mashiach in him or her. And that spark has to be unleashed. And when the spark of individuals are unleashed, that brings the general Mashiach as well.
Rabbi?
Yes?
How did the sages prescribe that each Jew practices these attributes? Did they get specific about how to do that?
Yes, some of them are spelled out specifically. Like chesed is clearly, what is chesed? Kindness. That's self-explanatory. Gvura is a little bit more hazy. Gvura means strength. What does that mean? So it's understood to mean discipline. The Talmud says, who is a gibor? Who is a strong person? Hakovish is Yitzra, who can conquer his own inclinations. If you could control your own impulses, that's definition of strength. That's one aspect of it. So some are very self-explanatory, some require explanation. Over to you, that you should be the ones to do it. And everyone was shattered by that. What does that mean? The Rebbe said, I did everything. Did he give up on it? No. A few minutes later, he said, I'm going to give everyone $1 for charity so I can do whatever, I can do something more to bring Mashiach. So the Rebbe never gave up. He just said, it's time that you join me in my effort. And then the Rebbe said, even though you're crying out, how much longer, and you're saying all these things, you're doing it because you're told to do it, not because it's internalized. So then everyone was wondering, what does the Rebbe want us to do that we weren't doing before? We were studying Torah, we were doing everything. And the Rebbe a few weeks later said what he meant is that we should study the parts of Torah that deal with redemption. And that's the way, the best straightforward way to bring about redemption. So the question is, why, by studying Torah, does that bring about redemption? So the Rebbe himself explained it. But the first thing, the obvious thing is, what most people in the Jewish communities of the world know about Mashiach is influenced by non-Jewish teachings. Many Jews base their theology on non-Jewish theologies. The language that even we use, and that's because of the most theological vocabulary. Where do we get it from? We get it from the King James Bible. That's where theological words were presented in English. So even our vocabulary, and sometimes we can't avoid it because that's the vocabulary, is non-Jewish. So the first thing we get from learning Torah is that we are able to figure out what are the Jewish views of the Messianic age, not what the secular or Christian or other religions say about it. Secondly, it's not just misconceptions that people have, because you often find people saying that, is the Mashiach God? No, Mashiach is not God. Mashiach is as human as all of us. The whole point of Mashiach is that humans are the ones who do it. And this is a very fundamental difference between Judaism and the other religions, because other religions believe that humans have really no role in everything. They just have to embrace their God, and that's good enough to be saved. Judaism says, no, we do everything. God puts it in our hands. So that's a basic fundamental difference, that Mashiach is not God. God sends a human leader to be the Mashiach, because this human leader has reached the state of, the ultimate state that a human being is capable of reaching, which means that just like Moses was the greatest Jew that ever lived, greatest person that ever lived, because he was the model of what it means to be a perfect human being, but a human being, the Mashiach will be like Moses, in fact, in some ways greater than Moses. Yes?
What are the requirements of becoming Mashiach?
Are you applying for the job? Ms. Shiach.
You applied the job application.
Mashiach has to be, Maimonides delineates the requirements, has to be a Jewish leader. He has to be steeped in the Torah. He has to be totally committed to all of its mitzvahs. He has to influence the Jewish people to go in its path. He has to repair all the breaches. And then he has to wage wars against the enemies who try to undermine our existence or try to destroy Israel, which is what's going on right now. And then he has to build the Beis HaMikdash, the third temple. And then he will gather all the Jews from all parts of the world and bring them to Jerusalem, bring them to Israel, and subsequently to Jerusalem, to the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. Then he has to bring peace to the whole world and recognition of one God to the whole world. Not very taxing, no.
He has to be a descendant.
Oh, he has to be a descendant of King David, yes.
So I know you kept saying he has to. Is there a reason it can't be a she?
Yes, there is a reason, because it can only be one person, and it has to be, it's the most discriminatory job in the world. Only one person is eligible for it. So most men, how many billion people are there? About 8 billion, a few more born the last few minutes. Of the 8 billion people, there's only one eligible person, and everyone else is excluded. So it's not, yes.
I think that in another that there are, like, in every generation there are people who could be
Yes.
Mashiach.
There are potential people, yes.
So there could be people, now who could be Moshiach. Is it because internally they don't have it, or externally it's not the right?
No, the Talmud refers to different people that they were Mashiach. That means that they were the ones who were most qualified to be Mashiach if the time was ripe for it to happen. It's not up to Mashiach. See, people say, well, why can't Mashiach? I know I heard this from Jews who went through the Holocaust, and they say they don't believe in Mashiach because we asked Mashiach, why didn't he come then? And the answer is, Mashiach doesn't decide when he's coming. It's God who decides when to send Mashiach. Mashiach is a servant of God. And when God says it's time for him to come, he comes. The one who wants the one who really wants Mashiach more than anything else is Mashiach himself. What time is it now? The Talmud tells a story. A great rabbi was visited by Elijah the prophet, not this Eliyahu. And he asked him, when is Mashiach coming? And he said to the rabbi, go ask Mashiach himself. He says, where is he? And he tells him where he is. And he says, he's sitting amongst lepers. So how will I know who is Mashiach? There's a whole bunch of lepers there. He said, all the lepers will take off their dressings for their wounds and then put on new dressings. But the Mashiach will be different. He'll take off only one dressing and then take care of it and then put on a new dressing. Not take off all of them. Why? Because he so wants to come and to do his job that he doesn't want to waste time. The time that it'll take for him to put on new dressings will be a delay of a few minutes, and he can't tolerate that delay. That means of all people who want Mashiach, it's Mashiach himself. If you see someone who's so obsessed with Mashiach and who wants it and cries about it more than anyone else, that person may be the one who's Mashiach, because that's one of the signs of Mashiach. But it's not up to him. If it was up to him, he would be here a long time ago. It's up to God. It'll enable us to see Mashiach through Jewish eyes. And thirdly, and this is the most important one that the Rebbe emphasized, Torah has the capacity to alter nature, and it can change our mindset. If I have a certain mindset about a secular subject and I read a good book about it, it may or may not change our mindset, because it doesn't control us. But if you study Torah properly, Torah has the ability to control nature. And therefore, our mindset is a product of our nature. Torah could change it. And if our problem is that our mindset is an exile mindset, we were programmed into exile, the best way to deprogram us is through study of Torah in general, and particularly the study of the parts of Torah that deal with redemption. Where are these parts? They're in the Bible, they're in the Talmud, they're in the Midrash, they're in the Zohar, they're in Hasidic teachings, and perhaps the most extensive treatment of Mashiach and redemption are in the writings of the Rebbe. The Rebbe was obsessed with Mashiach, and he himself said it about himself, I'm crazy about Mashiach. That's an expression the Rebbe himself used to someone. And the Rebbe said, I know people criticize me for talking so much about Mashiach. He says, they have something to be, they're right, I'm crazy about the subject. Why? Because as a great leader, the Rebbe wanted to bring an end to exile with all the pain and suffering. And there's a letter, and I'll conclude on this, there's a letter that the Rebbe wrote to the President of Israel. It was, I think, the second president of Israel, Ben Tzvi, that in a letter that he wrote him, he didn't address him as the Nasi. Nasi is the Hebrew word for president. But it's also the word used for Mashiach in the book of Ezekiel. And the Rebbe did not address him as Nasi. And apparently he was a little bit offended. I think the Rebbe may have used the word president, the English word, not the Hebrew word Nasi. So the Rebbe wrote a letter, and he said, from the time I went to Cheder, I went to school, and even before that, in other words, when I'm 2-3 years old, I always imagined the time will come when Mashiach will take away all the pain and suffering, and we will understand why there's pain and suffering. I'm paraphrasing, I can't get myself to use the term that's used for Mashiach for a human being, for a non-Mashiach human being. Mashiach is a human being as well, but for someone who's in a secular position of leadership. So I respect your position as a president of Israel, but not as Nasi, because that is reserved for Mashiach. So the Rebbe, in a very rare autobiographical statement, the Rebbe virtually never spoke about himself. And this is one case where he says, in the time I went to Cheder, and he went to Cheder when he was 3 years old, and even before that, so we're talking about a 2 or 3 year old, I was always depicting this in my mind, this image of Mashiach. And so the Rebbe was obsessed with it, and that's what he wanted. We should be obsessed with it as well. And being obsessed with Mashiach doesn't mean you do anything crazy. There are people who will do crazy things if they are obsessed with something. Obsessed means we act totally normal. What's totally normal? We are able to fuse spirituality with the physical world. That's the normal. That's the ideal, that balance, that creation of balance. Any questions? Yes.
Did Maimonides say that Moshiach could control nature?
Does Maimonides say that? No, the Talmud says it. And Maimonides, as far as I can't remember from, I shouldn't say no because I don't know everything Maimonides wrote. But as far as I can tell, the Rambam doesn't mention that. But the Talmud mentions it, and the Rambam, is totally devoted to the teachings of the Talmud.
Okay, I'll tell them. Thank you. Respect.
Any other questions on Zoom?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
When is Moshiach coming?
I was about to say, don't ask me when Mashiach is coming. But the answer to that is today.
Hayom.
Right. Now, it's interesting. This question refers to the story I told you, where this rabbi meets Mashiach and he asks him, when are you coming? And Mashiach said, Hayom, today. And it didn't happen. So he goes back to Elijah and he says, he promised he's coming today and he didn't come today. He says he misunderstood him. There's a biblical phrase that says, Hayom im tishmu b'koli. Today, if you listen to my voice, God says. There's a condition attached to it. So the Rebbe once said to someone, when we say Hayom without conditions, Mashiach has to come today without conditions. In other words, I think what the Rebbe was trying to impress upon us, if I take an object and I drop it, where is it going to go if I leave go of it?
The floor.
What?
Gravity.
No, it went up.
You didn't drop it, you threw it.
Okay, but it left my hand.
Okay.
But what exactly happened? Of course you're right when it says gravity will make it come down. But some things can happen to reverse, go against gravity. When we say Hayom, Mashiach is coming today, in our mind we have to be so convinced that that's the most natural thing. It's like leaving go of something and it falls, but sometimes it cannot fall. Some wind can come and blow it up high up in the air, but that's not normal. That's abnormal. The Rebbe wants us to be so permeated with the awareness of Mashiach that to us Mashiach's coming is the norm. His not coming is the anomaly. That doesn't make sense. And that's what we have to do to deprogram ourselves. Our program tells us Mashiach's coming is not normal, and we have to expect something abnormal to happen. No, it's the other way around. Another point, the Rebbe once addressed the fact that he got criticism, that he talks about Mashiach. Mashiach is a dream, they said. And the Rebbe says, no, you got it all wrong. Exile is a dream. What is a dream? A dream is a time of contradictions, when you're not in touch with reality. Exile is the most dramatic form of inconsistency, the contradictions that abound in our own lives. Everything is so contradictory, everything is so abnormal. Exile is abnormal, Mashiach is the norm, and that's what he's trying to impress upon us. That's what we have to impress upon ourselves, and deprogram our belief that exile is the norm and Mashiach is the aberration. It's the other way around. Okay, everybody is invited to stay for the presentation of the new facility of the Jewish Discovery Center, which is now in the state of exile. But it'll soon...
Coming to redemption.
It's coming to redemption, is right.
Rebuilding.
Thank you, Pipsy.